for to mention the team, I can only say probably quite chaotic, just lots of stuff going on. I can't say too much for the team after because we weren't really together much. I walked around the field at Newcastle when I got back to the club with Lawrence Delelio because Wasps were playing Newcastle, so we walked around with the cup before the game. Neither of us were allowed to play. So, I sort of saw him and we had a brief chat about how things were, but people were all over the place, a bit chaotic. But in terms of the emotional experience, it was the moment before the final whistle went was euphoric. The moment when the final whistle went was amazing. The moment just after the final whistle was great. 10 minutes after the final whistle, not bad. The next morning, horrendous. Like I said, when your identity is about achieving, and suddenly you achieve everything and you realize that stressing and suffering does not end in joy. It just creates habits of stressing and suffering. And hence, I got that brief joy, like we spoke about going to Toulon, and then that habit of who I am, or who I thought I was, kicked in, and suddenly the next morning I'm stuck because I've got nothing to achieve. And actually, but achieving is my worth, and I've got nothing to achieve, and the darkness starts to kick in. And then suddenly, it was a great moment for realizing that stress and suffering doesn't bring about joy, but I wasn't ready to hear that. So straight away, the first thing I did was thought to myself, you know why I'm not joyful? I haven't had my Hollywood, happy sort of credits rolling ending. It's because we haven't won the World Cup twice in a row. So sure enough, I cooked up another reason that once I get there, then I'll have my joy. We got to the next World Cup final, went to Toulon, won European and the league in the double in the same year. Never been done by a French club. We did that for the first time ever, and each time, no joy. Moments of euphoria and pleasure, brief glimpses, and then back to the habit. And so these things mixed in with the injury period I had were the great opportunity to realize that actually at the end of life, it's going to be the same thing as at the end of this career, or the same thing at the end of this game. It will be a kind of a nice moment followed by a kind of, I just didn't touch it. And so, like I said, this inward journey is where that lasting space of euphoria and connection exists. And since going on that journey, it's just, it's kind of made me realize just how small the external was, despite the fact that you can be playing in front of 100,000 and kick the winning drop goal in the last few seconds of a World Cup final. It's like, it doesn't matter compared to now and full engagement. And the now is all of me. It's not even comparable because it's a different dimension. So going back to just before about the kind of awareness, acceptance, responsibility side of things. I've had advice from all different kinds of places and people and what have you, but it's not something that comes in a straight phrase. And so it's a little bit longer, but for me, the way that I've taken that advice and used what's resonated and moved the rest and brought in my own experiences to come with this idea that I'm either, if I'm not defined by my vision of the future and those fulfilled, already sort of already having received it, thankful, loving life emotions. If I'm not defined by that, then I'm defined by my past, the old emotions and reactions, things that happened to me by accident. And I call those two things, there's a grafter state and there's a genius state. The genius creates that kind of that space of flowing no matter what. You look at genius players, I know, like Federer, it always looks like he's exploring each point. He's just so loose and what have you, and just so available and so responsive. And then you look at the grafter state, which was me in a lot of rugby games. Shallow breathing, shoulders up, just looking so empty. You go into a rugby change room just before a game and you want to see a lot of guys grafting, looking like fragile, smaller versions of themselves. Go into a change room just before the game and you'll see maybe one person in there who's still a genius in the change room. And there you find someone who's on the journey. And it's that, to the piece of advice I'm being is that, am I grafting right now or am I exploring my genius? Am I trying to control this moment or am I exploring it? Am I living in fear and anger or am I living through love? That straight question is another one of saying, am I living to the limits of my past or am I exploring the potential of my being? In other words, my future. And that question will never go away. It is right here, right now, and there is no middle ground. There's no kind of, oh, I'm deciding. If you're not being defined by a vision of your future and those complete feelings, then you're being defined by what's already happened to you. And that's the journey of ever decreasing opportunity, and ultimately what people blame on getting older and what's happening around them. Two answers to this. One at the beginning was that I didn't have a choice. My whole identity and survival in life was through achieving. So to get to the end of a journey was essentially death for me. So as soon as I came towards the end of the journey, I cooked up a story or a new problem to have something to achieve. So that resetting of goals was a kind of reactionary, obligatory, compulsive sort of movement for me. However, later on, it becomes the realization of how, for me, life works, which is, and I'll take 2 minutes to explain this because it's really, really important. I think someone was talking about, might be looking for best bits of advice, and sort of follows the same thing. Is that I was talking earlier about that acceptance of clearing the slate and being able to say, right now, in true acceptance, there's no one to be, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go. It's just in true acceptance of something, it just is. And there's a space of quiet. From that space of quiet opportunity, the responsibility that what you do next is not about, right, I need to go and change this. You set your intention in terms of, this is what I want to happen next. I visualize it, I see it in immense detail. But then the biggest step is that then I visualize it already having happened. And that emotional state that you trigger through that, and it's a really strong piece of work to trigger feelings of love for life, gratitude, worthiness, fulfillment. You bring those future states, those future conditional states, into the unconditional now. So now you live through the now, through fulfillment, gratitude, as if it's already happened. And now you become effortless, you become inspired, you become intuitive, you become connected, loving. Instead of being in that space of, I need these things to happen for me to feel fulfilled, in which case you go about your life acting as insecure, unfulfilled, insufficient. And if you ask anyone, how do you feel at your very best? The first thing they'll say is, I mean, your very, very best, not just when things are going okay, but your absolute peak. Do you feel stressed or relaxed? Relaxed. Do you feel like you're trying, or are you effortless? Well, I'm effortless. Do you feel, like you're fighting, or are you flowing? I'm flowing. Now, as soon as you go to those emotional states of fulfillment, worthiness, love for life, gratitude, you'll find you'll start to flow effortlessly, and you draw towards you everything that you desire. You don't have to go and fight for it. You do what you do with full engagement, and you draw it towards you. And it's the secret to health, recovery, active recovery. You don't have to wait till you sleep at night to start relaxing and regenerating and healing, because actually in that state of fulfillment, you are already doing that whilst acting. It's a very, very strong movement. And that for me is undoubtedly kind of the biggest, like I said, moving on to the piece of advice, but that's where it starts for me.